Hello students, welcome to Byju's IS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking some of the very important economics related articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers, and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I've chosen the time period from 4th of May to 17th of May 2020, and the articles that I've chosen are from Hindu, Indian Express, Business Standard, Live Mint, Business Line. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is related to remittances. Please understand, a large number of India's population or a substantial number of India's population has migrated out of India, has settled in various countries, and this particular population will keep on earning from these particular countries and sending back these particular monies to the dependents or to their respective households in India. This particular money that India receives from the Indian diaspora which is settled outside on work basis in simple terms is referred to as remittances or inward remittances. Now this particular inward remittances is very important for certain reasons. First, at the state level, a state such as Kerala has a huge number of people from Kerala who have migrated or who have moved to these particular countries and earning or sending back these particular remittances. Out of total 10 million people who are working outside India, that is Indians who are working outside India, around 2.5 million people are actually from the Kerala state itself. And it is said that the remittances that will come into Kerala is around 60% of the total debt of Kerala itself. And in terms of the incomes that is earned by the state of Kerala, the remittances come at around 33%, around one third of the total income earned by the state. That is first very important point. Second very important point. These particular in remittances will bring very precious dollars into Indian economy. We'll basically discuss the concept of forex reserves, right? Multiple foreign related assets or foreign denominated assets are kept under the forex reserves. Dollar is one of these particular reserve assets. So the dollars will keep on flowing into India under the concept of remittances. Remittances, if you have studied, will be kept under the concept of balance of payments. That is the second point. Third very important point. The remittances are usually cyclical with respect to international crude oil prices. This was discussed in this year's economic survey itself. The survey says there is pro-cyclicality between the in remittances as well as the international crude oil prices. That is, when the international crude oil prices are higher, that is, the Middle Eastern countries are earning higher because the crude oil prices are higher, the remittances which are coming into India also have increased. And when the international crude oil prices will take a hit, like in the current situation, the remittances which are coming into India will also take a hit. For example, World Bank, which is the authority which gives an estimations related to the remittances, has stated that last year, that is for the year 2019, the total amount of remittances which have flown into India are around $82 billion, the highest in the world. As per the World Bank report, India receives the highest in remittances. You can see that representation here. But for the year 2020, as per this particular report, the in remittances into India will experience a drop of around 23% and will fall down to around $64 billion. So this is a very important inference that you need to draw with respect to the connection between the international crude oil prices as well as the remittances. Now some of you will basically ask the question, sir, why are they connected in the first place? A large number of these particular Indian workers are located in these particular Middle Eastern countries itself. And for the Middle Eastern countries, the revenue from the crude sales contributes the highest to their total revenue. And whenever the international crude oil prices are doing very well, their revenues will keep on increasing. So Indian workers who are also working in these particular economies will earn a higher amount of money. And when the crude oil prices will decline, take a hit like this, the revenues of these Middle Eastern countries will take a hit. The Indian migrant workers or Indian workers in these particular countries, their incomes will also take a hit. And when their incomes will take a hit, the remittances which are coming into India will start falling down. That has been the point of discussion in this particular article. Now based on this, let's solve a question here. Consider the following statements. India receives the highest in remittances. Yes, as per World Bank report, India is the topmost. Second, remittances are part of the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, there are two types of accounts, current account, capital account. Usually, you will see remittances under the concept of current account. There is in remittances, there is out remittances also. So, is remittances a part of the balance sheet? Definitely yes. Both the statements are correct. So, the right option will be option C. Both are true. Next article. How government can roll out a stimulus without upsetting rating agencies. That is basically connection between the stimulus as well as the credit rating. Now, in the recent times, Government of India has announced Atmanirbhar package, self-reliant India package, and one of the biggest criticism against this particular package has been that the income support provided by the government is not sufficient, and majority of the announcements or the reforms which have been announced are not even addressing the demand side issue, they are addressing the supply side issue. And even if they are addressing the supply side issue, these particular measures will not put a huge burden in terms of a fiscal numbers on the balance sheet of the government. Government very recently has announced a stimulus package of 20 lakh crore rupees. And when the Prime Minister announced this, the market felt that government would be spending 20 lakh crore rupees. But when the analysis or when the announcements are complete, 5 tranches or 5 rounds of announcements are over, and when you calculate all these particular numbers, you will find that, or various experts have pointed out that, the burden on Government of India in terms of expenditure is very, very small. Various experts have pegged it between 1% to 2% of GDP. When government announced, they said that it would be 10% of GDP. That has been the difference. Now, what is the issue here? One very important point that to be noted here is, if Government of India had literally spent 20 lakh crore rupees out of its pocket, is it okay? I'm saying it has not spent, but imagine Government of India had spent all the 20 lakh crore rupees from out of its pocket. Its expenditure would have simply shot through the roof. And when expenditure increases like this, the fiscal deficit as well as the revenue deficit will also suddenly shoot through the roof. It is already estimated that whatever was the budgeted estimate for market borrowings, under the present situation, Government of India will end up borrowing 50% more than that. I'll repeat the statement here. If Government of India in the beginning of this year under the budget had stated that they would borrow 100 rupees from the market, presently they would be ending up borrowing 150 rupees from the market. So the borrowings have already expanded by more than 50%. Now in this particular situation, imagine Government of India literally spends or literally incurs an expenditure of 20 lakh crore rupees. The fiscal deficit as well as the revenue deficit of Government of India would have simply ballooned. As a result of this, the rating agencies, the credit rating agencies would have downgraded the sovereign credit rating. The credit rating agencies such as Fitch, S&P, Moody's would have simply downgraded the sovereign credit rating for India. Now you will ask me, what is the problem? Let them downgrade. Right? What will be the impact of it? There will be a huge impact because of that. As of now, India's credit rating, that is sovereign credit rating, is somewhere in the range of a triple B. That is, it is the lowest in the investment grade. If fiscal deficit increases, revenue deficit increases, and the credit rating agencies will downgrade it further, then you're basically falling into junk ratings or junk grading ratings. Now, if you're confused about what is this investment grade as well as a junk grade, then my recommendation would be either watch one video which we have provided only for these particular credit rating agencies. There is a connection between sovereign credit rating as well as the credit rating agencies. Or else, please watch the earlier video, the one which is published before this. In that video, we have again discussed what is this idea of an investment grade rating and junk grade rating. Now come back to the discussion here. I said that if India's rating is downgraded any further downgrading means India's sovereign credit rating will fall into a junk grade. The impact of that will be many of these particular investment such as pension funds, insurance funds, right, or sovereign debt funds or sovereign wealth funds, there is a restriction on these particular funds to invest in a market or to invest in securities which have got a very less credit rating or very low credit rating. In simple terms, if I am one of these particular institutions, I will not be allowed to invest in your instruments because your instrument has got a junk grading. I am only allowed to invest in investment graded bonds or investment graded instruments, not junk graded investments. The logic here is that in case of a junk grading, the risk is very, very high. In case of investment grading, risk is comparatively lesser. So this will have an impact on the investments in the market. It will not only have an impact on this particular debt market, it will also have a spillover effect. And this particular article basically discusses this reason. Okay, so this is a discussion related to the stimulus given by Government of India or the possibility of a stimulus and the connection to credit rating. Now let's have a look at two articles here. Both articles are related to cooperative banks. One is a straightforward article, very simple article where RBI has cancelled the license of the cooperative bank CKP. And the second very, very important article where Supreme Court of India has stated that the cooperative banks or cooperative lenders will be treated on par with the other lenders under the SARFAESI Act. Let's start with the first one, then we'll go to the second one. First, one of the bank, that is a CKP cooperative bank, the performance of this particular bank was very, very bad. The net worth, that is basically the difference between the assets as well as the liabilities, has entered into a negative territory. As per this particular article, the net worth of this particular company or the cooperative bank was at minus 247 crore rupees, which means liabilities were 247 crore rupees more compared to the assets. And RBI, taking this into stock, has stated that the license which has been given to this particular cooperative bank to conduct banking operations will be withdrawn. And this is done for a simple reason. RBI is the regulator of the banking sector, and in the recent times, Government of India has tried to give more regulatory powers to RBI in order to regulate the cooperative banks. Now, apart from this, what information that you need to understand or derive from this particular article? This is another very bad news for overall financial sector, specifically for cooperative banks. But to a certain extent, the damage is controlled for a simple reason. Government of India very recently has increased the deposit insurance. That is, earlier the deposit insurance provided was up to 1 lakh rupees. Now it has been increased to up to 5 lakh rupees. As a result of this particular reform which has been implemented or measure which has been implemented by RBI because of the announcement of Government of India, more than 99% of the depositors who have kept their money in this particular CKP cooperative bank will get their funds back, will get their deposits back. But again, what this article doesn't say is the time that will be taken for the money to be given back to these particular depositors. Because the process takes a very long period of time. There is a process which has to be followed. After the whole process is over, RBI or the bank will ensure that the deposits will be given back to these particular depositors. That is the first very important point. Second very important point, I stated that this particular bank going bust or this particular issue of cooperative bank is not a very good outcome for whole financial system. Because in the last couple of years, if you have seen, the financial system has been taking one hit after another. IL&FS defaulted, PMC cooperative bank was under scanner. Again, that is a bad situation. Followed by this particular cooperative bank, again, which is a bad situation. Franklin Templeton, it is a bad feature for or bad outcome for Indian financial system. So one after the other, you are seeing that many of these particular institutions are coming under stress. This doesn't give a very good picture for the whole of Indian financial system. That is another very important point that you need to make a note of. Now we'll shift to the other side of the article or the second article in the slide, which is very, very important. That is, Supreme Court of India very recently has ruled that the lenders, that is cooperative banks, will be treated on par with other lenders under the SARFAESI Act. First and foremost, what is the SARFAESI Act here? SARFAESI basically stands for Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Security Interest. Now please understand this. Generally, when the loans are given, the lenders are divided under two heads: the secured lenders as well as the unsecured lenders, or secured creditors or unsecured creditors. How do I differentiate between both secured as well as unsecured? If a bank gives a loan, collects a collateral, takes a collateral, such type of a creditor is called as a secured creditor. For example, housing loan is provided by a bank. And when the housing loan is provided to you people, don't you think the bank will take the house itself as a collateral? The documents of the house will be there with the bank itself. That is the asset which has been provided as a collateral. Now, what is the importance there? You have taken a loan from a bank, you are supposed to repay the loan. If you don't repay the loan, you default on the repayment. Then the bank will issue a notice to you for a certain time period, ask you to repay the loan. If you don't repay the loan, then the bank will simply seize the asset and will auction this, sell this in the market, recover the dues. That's a very simple process. Now, this particular process or this particular power to the lenders has been given under the SARFAESI Act. Is it okay? Under SARFAESI Act, imagine I am a bank or you are a borrower. Okay? Or else, let's reverse it. You will feel happy. You are a bank, I am a borrower. You have given me a loan on house and I have kept my housing documents with you people. I have not repaid. You will send me a notice. Right? And this particular notice shall be sent for a period up to 60 days. Even after 60 days, if I don't repay the loan, you will simply come seize my asset and sell it in the market. That power is given to you people under the SARFAESI Act. But understand this very, very carefully. The concept of a collateral is only present when it is a secured creditor. That is secured lender. Secured by nature means there is a collection of a collateral. In case of unsecured lenders, there is no collateral. And when there is no collateral, what is the importance of SARFAESI Act for them? That is the reason this is very, very important. SARFAESI Act doesn't cover the unsecured creditors. It covers the secured creditors only. Now, within secured creditors, there could be multiple types of banks. One could be urban cooperative bank. One could be a scheduled commercial bank. Now, earlier what was the issue? Earlier under SARFAESI Act, only the scheduled banks were recognized as secured creditors. Government of India amended SARFAESI Act and said that even the cooperative banks will be classified as secured creditors under SARFAESI Act. Now you understand this? Earlier, these particular cooperative banks, even though if they have collected collateral, were not considered as secured creditors under SARFAESI. And since they were not considered secured creditors, the process of giving a notice, seizing the collateral, it was not available for cooperative banks. Now, Supreme Court of India has stated that the amendment that was done by Government of India and which was challenged at the Supreme Court is not correct. The decision of the Government of India to consider cooperative banks as secured creditors is correct one. Is it okay? I'll repeat the process again. Government of India amended SARFAESI Act, categorized these cooperative banks as secured creditors, which basically means even these particular cooperative banks can use the SARFAESI Act provisions now. It was challenged from 2013. It has been in challenge. Supreme Court now says the decision of Government of India is correct. The amendment is correct. That has been there in the newspaper, and this is very, very important piece of news. What is the advantage? On one side, you can see there is a problem with respect to cooperative banks. The NPAs have kept on increasing. Many of these particular cooperative banks have been struggling to recover their loans. Why? If you are not covered under SARFAESI, you will have to go through the normal process of a recovery, which will take a very long time period for you people. That is as a bank. But if you are covered under SARFAESI, you can issue a simple notice, wait for 60 days, doesn't repay, simply seize the collateral and dispose of the asset, recover the loans. So this particular news article has come as a relief to the cooperative banks. Now the cooperative banks can also use the provisions under SARFAESI Act to recover their dues. whenever the account is non-performing, whenever there is a non-repayment in case of these particular accounts, the provisions of SARFAESI can be used, collateral can be seized under the powers of SARFAESI. So that is the discussion provided in this particular article. Now based on this, let's have a look at the question here. The lenders are empowered to auction the assets which have been placed to them to recover the loans. That is basically this particular question is on SARFAESI. I have not written it in the title, but anyways, consider the following statements about SARFAESI. The lenders are empowered to auction the assets which have been placed to them to recover the loans. Please underline the term lenders. All the lenders are not covered. It has to be only secured lenders. That is very, very important, because in case of unsecured lenders, there is no concept of a collateral itself. When there is no collateral, how can they simply auction them? Okay, so first statement wrong. Lender can take the possession of the collateral after giving notice of 120 days. First, underline the lender again. It doesn't say secured lenders, so on the face of it, it is wrong. Even if they say secured lenders, look at the last part of the statement. It says 120 days. It should be 60 days. So second statement is also wrong. Right option will be option D. Both the statements are false. Next, article related to preference for cash. Now please understand this. Before I explain to you what has been given in the article, whenever there is this kind of uncertainty, again and again I know I am using the term uncertainty and volatility. Uncertainty, volatility, risk in the market. What we usually find is households will start holding cash. Is that okay? Households will start storing a lot of cash. This article says this is not good. Households should not be storing cash. It will have an impact on the economy. What impact you will understand in a minute. But first and foremost, why do you think households are holding on to the cash? Imagine, right, yourself. You look at the market situation. You look at the uncertainty. People are getting fired from the job. Supply is getting disrupted in the market. Production is getting disrupted. In this particular situation, don't you think you will also be worried about the future? And when you are worried about the future, in what way you want to hold your assets? You want to invest in real estate? You do not know what will happen to real estate market, let's say down the line. You want to hold your investment in gold? Yes, preferable, but again, volatility. Most importantly, households will prefer to hold their assets in the form of cash. Why? Liquidity is very, very high. Now again, every now and then I'll be using the term liquidity. What is the meaning or exact meaning of the term liquidity? Liquidity refers to, understand this very carefully, liquidity refers to the process of converting an asset into cash in a very quick manner or in a very quick time with lowest loss of the value. I'll repeat the statement. How quickly can you convert an asset into cash or into money without loss of the value or with lowest loss of the value? For example, you hold 100 rupees in hand. One hand, let's say 100 rupees cash. On the other hand, you will hold, let's say 100 rupees in the form of gold. Which one do you think is more liquid? Obviously cash, because you need not convert, it is already in the converted form. You can easily sell or purchase or transact using this particular cash in the market. But in terms of a gold, can you basically barter the gold in the market? You will have to sell gold, convert them into rupees, then use rupees to transact in the market. So understand this very carefully. Whenever this kind of a risk is present in the market, households will always prefer to hold on to cash. Now, what is the problem if there is a high preference for cash? The problem is that rather than keeping this particular 100 rupees in a bank, investing in a bond, investing in, let's say, assets in the market, I'm storing cash. The more cash I start storing like this, more is the cash that is not available in the market. Have you understand this? Let me give a very simple example. 100 rupees is there with me. I will deposit this 100 rupees with the bank. So bank has 100 rupees now. It will give loan to, let's say, a company. Company will purchase raw materials. So business generated for company also, business for the supplier also. Company will produce goods or services, sell it in the market. And when they produce goods or services, employment generation. When employment generation happens, income, wages or salaries will increase. demand for goods and services in the market will increase, supply will increase. So can you see this particular cycle which is happening? So this particular cycle which actually happens because of the circulation of money will be affected because households are not investing the money in the market. Households rather are preferring to hold on to the cash because they are uncertain about their future. Is it okay? Right? So this is the problem which has been discussed in this particular article about reducing the country's preference for a cash. Initially, RBI was worried that since cash is the main mode of a transaction in India, majority of the transaction happen through cash, it could lead to spread of the pandemic. But now it is worried that most of the households are storing cash. Most of the households are preferring to transact in cash, keep lot of cash. That is basically affecting the investment prospects in the market. So this is the gist of the article given here. Next article, monetizing the deficit. This particular article discusses that monetizing the deficit is not a good idea. First of all, what is the meaning of monetizing the deficit? Understand this very carefully. Government annually will present the budget. Is it okay? Annually, they will propose the budget. In the budget, usually you will see that the expenditure will be higher than their receipts or incomes. In simple terms, government will spend more than what it earns. This, in simple terms, is nothing but a deficit. One of the ways of bridging the deficit is by borrowing through RBI or Government of India borrowing from RBI. This particular borrowing from RBI, that is basically RBI printing currency, giving it to Government of India, is referred as deficit financing or monetized deficit. Is it okay? This particular deficit financing was basically discontinued with the passage of FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. We said that we do not want to go for deficit financing because whenever we go for deficit financing, RBI is printing currency, giving it to Government of India. Again, remember this also. It also means that if RBI is printing currency and giving it to Government of India, in return, RBI is also taking government securities from Government of India. Is it okay? So on one side, RBI gives money to government, and from the other side, will purchase the G securities of government. Now look at this very carefully. If monetization of the deficit is happening, there was a concern that it might lead to inflation. It might lead to inflation. And there's an excess supply of money in the market. Government keeps on taking money from RBI rather than being fiscally prudent. That is a precise reason under FRBM, we basically discontinued this particular idea of a monetized deficit. But in recent times, we have seen that Government of India's dependence on deficit financing has increased. Especially in the current situation, government is trying to borrow from the market. And because there is a huge volatility in the market, the yield rates on these particular G securities are very high, which basically means the Government of India has to pay huge amount of returns. So we are seeing that RBI is trying to participate in the market, trying to purchase the G securities or purchasing the G securities under monetization of the deficit, thereby increasing the demand for G securities, which will basically have an impact on the yield rates. Now, though this is being done by RBI, the author of the article says this is not preferable. This is not a good idea. Why? Look at this. I said that with monetization of the deficit like this, there is a danger that we are fueling inflation in the future. On one side, RBI says we want to control the inflation. We want to keep the inflation rate at 4% that has been fixed by Government of India. But on the other hand, RBI is basically monetizing the deficit, increasing the money supply in the market, which will obviously fuel the inflation rate. However, please understand these particular points. Right now, Government of India's main concern is not inflation. The primary concern for Government of India is how do I ensure that economy will be protected from COVID-19. Already there is a huge impact. How do I minimize this particular impact? How do I ensure there is a revival of the growth? That is the primary concern for Government of India. And second, as such, inflation is on the lower side. Even if the fueling of inflation happens, it could be controlled in the coming days. So these are the various points related to the points given in this particular article. Now based on this, I have given you a question, descriptive question in 250 words. Write a note on different modes of financing the deficit by the government. You will have to write the answer to this particular question in 250 words. So these are the various articles as well as the questions related to these particular articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.